everything we're talking about is numbers, right? And your targets for those things can be completely different from my targets. If all of those operational metrics are being hit, your financials are going to be fine. If you're hitting all your customers' goals as a vendor, if you're hitting your employees' goals, if you're hitting all those other goals, you're hitting your investors' goals, whatever those are, your financials are going to look just fine. You're going to attract new employees. You're going to retain employees.
Welcome to Making Sparks, the podcast where we ignite your passion for metal fabrication and fuel your business success. Join industry leaders and dive deep into the world of metalworking. From business insights to tips of the trade, Making Sparks is your forge of knowledge. During each episode, discover success stories, innovative solutions, and expert interviews that light the path to business growth. Subscribe today and grow and improve your company, and let's make sparks fly together.
Welcome back to Making Sparks. This is our part 2 with Mike Payne. This is Matthew's guest, but I'm doing the intro. So I'm Casey, the host, with my co-host, Matthew Nix. And we're going to talk a little bit about a podcast, I think, that Mike is kicking off and why he's bringing a unique perspective to fabrication, machining, and manufacturing companies. So Matthew, I'll let you kind of take away a little bit.
Yep. Thanks, Casey. Yeah. So just a quick recap. This is part 2. If you didn't listen to part 1, I encourage you to go back and listen to that. I thought there were some great takeaways from Mike.
I think so.
In that
it
as
was
well.
A fun conversation.
Yep. And so just kind of a real brief recap. What we talked about. Mike's out visited us in Indiana. He's another manufacturer in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we were just talking about how we have different career backgrounds, but both kind of came to the same place to where we're operating a business, but also growing through mergers and acquisitions. And Mike's got an extensive experience with M&A prior to being an actual shop owner and operator himself. And so his background, we talked about having different backgrounds, but we didn't really get into the details of that. My background is I grew up working on the shop floor. It's the only thing I've ever done. I didn't go to college. Since I feel like I've got a college education on my own since then.
PhD.
I read a lot, of course, learned through a lot of mistakes, and did an online executive business administration course. I've done all the things, but I just grew up on the shop floor. It's all I ever did. Don't have any formal background in training. Don't have an actual discipline that I learned outside of the trade. Mike, on the other hand, has a finance background. He was involved in a software business and was involved in an accounting firm, right?
Yes. Yep.
And so it really brings a whole different background and skill set to the equation, which has led us to, we keep talking about numbers. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike, and we can talk a little bit about where we're going with this.
Do you feel like your business has hit a plateau? Are profit margins slowly eroding over time? Perhaps you've outgrown your current structure or struggle to find the work-life balance you desire. As a fabrication or machine shop owner, navigating these concerns can be overwhelming. That's where ProFab Alliance can help. Built upon a foundation dating back to 1902, we understand the fabricator's journey because we've lived it. We're here to help you grow your business, maximize profits, and live a more balanced life. With our consulting expertise, supportive community, and franchise options, we're committed to your success. ProFab Alliance, by fabricators for fabricators. Visit profaballiance.com to learn more.
Yeah, so as we kind of were closing out the previous episode, we're talking about, in a lot of ways, business is business, right? And every industry, every business they do have their bits of uniqueness, but at the end of the day, what any owner is looking for is how much money am I making, and how much money do I have for growth? How much money do I have to fulfill my own personal dreams? Take care of my family, take care of my employees, take care of my future and everybody else's future. And really, that all ends up being numbers, right? So, as we talked about in the last episode, all businesses have revenue, all businesses have a cost of goods sold, all businesses have general expenses, and then you have a net profit at the end there. And there's
Hopefully.
You have a line for it. It might be it can be a red number.
It might have brackets,
right.
Brackets around. I don't like brackets.
Yeah, it could be brackets, but I mean, at the heart of it, that's just business, right? And I think one of the things in this industry, and I do feel like it's kind of going through a shift as well, but one of the things I love about this industry is how homegrown it is, right? I mean, I actually like that I'm unique. I mean, I like that I didn't grow up on the shop floor versus Matthew did, but we can both be at the same point 15, 20 years later, right? Where we're doing a lot of the same types of things, and we're creating those opportunities for our people and ourselves and investors or whoever that might be. You can learn both, right? I mean, I've learned the shop floor to a degree. You've learned the business side, the transaction side, that you've learned the numbers. And talking, as we were also talking in the last episode, I mean, there's not only is there the resources like you talked about, not going to college and being on the shop floor, but reading and watching and learning. There's also people that will help you, right? And people helped me learn the floor. People helped you learn the numbers. Yep. And but the numbers, I mean, math is math, right? So whether you're talking about what's a good business to buy, how to position your company to sell, I mean, that's the thing. I think that could be a whole nother topic of, how I want to sell in the next 5 years. What do I need to start doing now to sell my company successfully? Yeah. And get what I need to net out of that. How do I position my balance sheet and so forth for it to look good to Matthew to come by? So you've kind of got that level. Then you've got your financials. I mean, how am I doing? How did I do this month, this quarter, this year? You've got tax implications of decisions. You've got, there's a lot of stuff just on the financial side. And then, the other piece of numbers that I know I've relied on very heavily as I've, kind of gone into operating in the manufacturing space is just what are the metrics I need to worry about on even just a daily basis or a job base, not even the shop in a day, but a job in a day. Am I getting the parts per hour I needed? Am I getting, the run times? Those are all numbers.
Well, there's a lot of numbers that are what I would call non-financial metrics as well. Safety is one that comes to mind. Quality,
absolutely.
Customer service, on-time delivery.
On-time delivery.
And retention. There you go. It's one of the things that I talked about, and I want to circle back around to this, but you mentioned how it's a lot of like mom and pops in the industry, and you like that, and a lot of homegrown, family-owned businesses. I say we as one of those, we tend to maybe err on the side of not doing it by the numbers. And so then there's a blend there, but we're really, and Casey knows this, we're really invested in our culture at Nick's Companies, and really having a great corporate culture and, focusing on recruitment and retention. But one of the things I say is if we're doing it right, the numbers will prove it. So
right. They take care of themselves.
It's great to say. So we were named one of Indiana's best places to work, and we think we have one of the best cultures around, and that we take really good care of our people, and it's all fine and good. But if the numbers don't reflect it at the end, we've got work to do. And I would say we still have a lot of work to do. Sure. Our retention is, I think, substantially. Well, I don't think, I know, because we benchmark. There you go, by the numbers. Benchmarking is something that if you're not doing, you need to be doing. But I know our retention is substantially better than the industry average, but it's still not anywhere close to where we want it to be because we measure it.
Because you measured it. And that's the thing to me. I mean, numbers are just, they don't lie, right? So talk about best places to work. I've been involved in a few companies over the years that, were Oklahoma best places to work. And we had set that out as a goal in at least one instance. It was like, we want to be a best place to work, right? So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we did is went and look at, well, how are they judging it, right? And it is things like retention rate. It's benefit packages. It's training, dollars spent on training. It's
what's
safety.
Quantifiable about this?
Right. And where do we stand versus the people that have won this the last few years. So where do we need to improve, right? So we're just it was a goal of ours to be a best place to work, to receive that award, not because we wanted to hang it on the wall, but because retention
It forces you to get better.
Right.
And there is, by the way, there is value in hanging it on the wall.
There's absolutely
the wall
value.
is figurative, like the website, for example. I mean, there's recruitment.
You guys
value.
have banners hanging on the wall.
Yeah, but I mean, it's valuable literally, but also figuratively. You have that to promote.
And I would
about
also
the
add,
business.
just as a side note, to any of like the best places, like you guys are saying, like, yeah, you guys do have to play the game and hit the numbers to be able to get on there. But you also have to decide, are the numbers helping you actually become a best place to work?
Right.
Otherwise, it's, then you're really just doing it.
But I,
for that.
Well, the same can be said for customer service or anything. It's like the point isn't to make the numbers better. The point is if we're measuring the right thing and we're chasing a number, we're doing a better job of taking care of our customers.
You've always said you have to have keep score, and that's part of it too, right?
Well, so this industry, I mean, everybody in this industry will understand this. I mean, if I take my top 5 big OEM customers I do work for, we have a scorecard with them, and we usually have like an annual meeting where they go, here's how we've judged you as a vendor to us this past year. And for the most part, it's quality, it's on time, it's, there's different metrics, there's pricing metrics in there, but they're all slightly different, right? I mean, one customer might expect you to be 96% on time, one's 98 and one's 90, right? Well, they just gave me the numbers that I need to meet with them, right? And one might call on time that day. One might call it 5 days early, 3 days late, right? So now I know I've got a window. There's a number there, right? It's 5 and 3. I got an 8-day window to be on time. If I know how we're keeping score, then I can perform to those things. And I mean, I will tell you, I mean, we have our standard of how we expect to perform, but there are times, and Matthew, I'm sure you can think of this. I mean, I can get this job done or this job done, but not both by Friday. Well, if I know this customer is going to consider it on time if I deliver it on Tuesday, this customer's not, guess which one's getting done first, right? The one that is going to be where I'm going to be on time with both. So all of these different goals you have can relate back to a number. And then what I would say further, you immediately start thinking financials when we talk numbers. But the reality is to your point about culture and everything else, if all of those operational metrics are being hit, your financials are going to be fine, really, right? If you're hitting all your customers' goals as a vendor, if you're hitting your employees' goals, if you're hitting all those other goals, you're hitting your investors' goals, whatever those are, your financials are going to look just fine. You're going to see growth. You're going to attract new employees. You're going to retain employees. From there, it's just, it's kind of great. So you don't have to worry about, well, how much what percentage of revenue did we spend on postage last year? Like, it doesn't matter, right? Because we hit all our other goals. Some people do get too detailed down just into the income statement, and I think that can hurt you.
What would you say to like an owner operator or like a fabrication leader that might be scared of the numbers, that might like, obviously, one of the things I think anybody who's starting a business, they have to learn a little bit about financial literacy and things like that. But there's other, like all these other numbers that you're talking about, like how does someone get started in learning? Like, should they go right ahead and hire a consulting firm? Should they go right ahead and, go get an education in it? Should they start listening to podcasts? Should they go to like we have a local small business development center that offers free services that can actually teach you about what a P&L statement is and stuff like that. Like I'm asking kind of both of you guys, like if you guys had to say like 3 things, a guy or gal that's scared of the numbers, like how they can get a little bit more confident around it. What are like 3 things?
Well, there's 3 financial statements, so there's your 3 things. You have a income statement are also known as a P&L, got a balance sheet and a cash flow statement. The one that I think most people pay most attention to the P&L.
For sure.
And that's, as you mature as an organization, as you mature as an executive, you learn that, that might even be the least important one of all of them. It flows into the others, but you if you're not generating cash, you don't have any, one of the things we talk about is we say profits, or in this case, cash, are like oxygen. We need them both to survive, but neither is a very good reason to live. So that's the fuel that we need. We have to drive cash flow. And then of course your balance sheet's your long-term healthy organization. But I would say, I find that if people have familiarity at all with their financials, it's typically with the P&L. And I would tell them they need to understand how the P&L, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement all work together. And then, Mike, you can maybe chime in some advice on how to go about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, so all the scenarios you gave, I would say yes, 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 and yes, right? So,
other than I don't think you need a consultant to do that.
But you might.
If you need to reorganize, if your books are a mess, and you need somebody to reorganize the way,
maybe you need an interim CFO.
the way you're reporting your financials.
And part of that is,
but if you're just learning that.
you're learning, but also part of it, I was thinking more of like how to make financial goals and like the strategic planning and stuff. That's where I was thinking like a consulting or something like that would come in, or even just
if we're just talking about literacy though, which I think is the starting point. Like,
I mean, to learn
I didn't understand the balance sheet and income statement when I started out.
Right. And I think to the point, I mean, Matthew is a perfect example of how do you learn it, right? I mean, he's told us, he read, he talked to people, he met with people, he watched videos.
I called mentors and said, would you please come sit down with me and walk through this with me?
I mean, it's no different. I mean, yes, someone can be scared of the numbers. The first time I went out on the shop floor, I was like, guys, I want to run this machine. Yeah, I'm a little scared of that machine. I don't know what it's going to do. I've seen some accidents, right? I mean, so no different, right? You're just kind of scared of the unknown. Once you get going with it, it's not that difficult. I mean, there's not rocket science behind this. I mean, the numbers are the numbers, and once you start to understand, as Matthew pointed out, how your P&L feeds your balance sheet, and how what that balance sheet really says about your short-term and long-term success of your business or sustainability of your business, then you started understanding how, okay, this decision I'm making today is affecting whatever, right? But, to your question of how do you decide what's important, I mean, that's going to be through mentors. It's just so much of it just really depends on your goals. So, for example, I used to consult with a lot of companies that, are looking to sell. And, and it has some window, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And they want to grow the company before then, right? And I'm gonna buy these 3 new pieces of equipment. We'll stay in the manufacturing space, and I'm gonna buy these 3 new pieces of equipment because I'll have the ability to do this other stuff, and I can pick up this new line of work, and I'm gonna grow my revenue. And you walk that scenario through with them, and their bottom dollar is going to go down over the next 3 years if they do that, right? And their balance sheet's not going to look as healthy because they've got some debt on it. So you say, okay, well, what are buyers buying? In our industry, and to a large degree, they're buying a multiple of EBITDA, which
cash flow stream.
You're buying the cash flow, right? So if you're prepping to sell, making that investment, I'm not going to pay you $1 million more for your company because you spend $1 million on machines, right? I mean, shore up the EBITDA, earnings before income taxes, depreciation, amortization. Shore that up, maximize that. That's a totally different growth strategy over the next 3 years, because your growth you're looking for is in the value of your company. Now, if you're in Matthew's phase or my phase, what growth looks like to us is not necessary. I mean, it is we're always trying to maximize the value of our company. But if my window on that is 10 years, my strategy to growth is going to be totally different than if my window on that is 2 years.
Or if it's multi-generational.
Or if it's multi-generational, you're looking at it completely different.
But on the flip side of that, and one thing I found, that's why I appreciate your perspective and guys like you's perspective so much is that we can tend to be family businesses, and I think I've talked about this in another episode as well, but we can tend to err too far on the other end of the spectrum of it's like, you know, we will make decisions that maybe have negative financial impacts in the name of, you know, I don't know, in the name of reputation or doing the right thing, or hey, it's a long-term investment, and sometimes all of those things are the right thing to do, but balancing that is so important, and at least having the ability to somebody to soberly walk you through that, and then you can make the decision around doing it. We have a formal advisory board that we put together many years ago. It's been one of the best things we've ever done, and I like to populate my board with a diverse set of backgrounds, and so we usually have a multi-generational family business that sits on our board because we're a multi-generational family business. But I usually have a private equity or finance type. It's usually like a CFO that's working in private equity or something, coming from that space. I always like to have that perspective too. And then, of course, anything in between. But I'm giving you the two opposite ends of the spectrum. And sometimes we need that guy to smack us upside the head and say, you know,
This is what it's really
one guy,
costing
he used
you.
to use this private equity guy. He used the phrase, shoot it in the back of the head, or shoot them in the back of the head sometimes. But you know, you got to kill it.
Right.
Like, you know, don't be afraid to just, and that's, if you just manage purely by the numbers, you would have killed this a long time ago. Now,
Sure.
But
there's
I would
reasons not
argue,
to.
yeah, I would argue that you can't always manage just by the numbers, but
but
you
you-
ought to at least understand the numbers and understand the impact that it's.
And that's the
gonna
point. That's the point. It's not that you always are going to make the decision that is the best financial decision. I mean, there's reasons not
or
to.
the short term.
In the short term.
it could be the best long term
Right.
financial decision.
I mean, it might impact you this quarter, this year, the next couple of years, whatever. But as long as you know what that impact is, then you can make that, quote, bad decision, right? Like it's like, I know what I'm giving up and what I'm getting out of it is okay, right? So, understanding those things are just as important. You'll never hear me say, you got to run, when we talk by the numbers, it doesn't have to be that you have to be perfect, and make a number, let the numbers decide things, but you need to know the impacts.
Yeah, and an example of that would be, I might be talking to one of our business unit managers and saying, based on the numbers, you have one extra overhead headcount than what you ought to have. Sure. Now, I'm not going to go in there and say, you have 30 days to get rid of somebody. Right. We don't operate that way. But there's also nothing wrong with saying, just so you know, based on the numbers, we're one person heavy. Right. So I expect you to figure that out. Like maybe we're moving some people around, we're repurposing people, we need to grow our revenue and margin, or we let attrition take care of some of that.
Sure.
I mean, there's a number of solutions.
No,
to
then
that.
that's actually a great example. I mean, that's something I think, any business owner can relate to. I mean, managing your workforce is not, I don't mean the HR issues, but just what is that number? How many, do I have too many? Do I have too little?
And that great benchmark is revenue per FTE, full-time equivalent.
That's what I track.
Yeah, and it's crazy how many people don't look at that and benchmark themselves. I mean, that's a pretty simple metric. When we're going in to do an acquisition, that's one of the first things we look at. How much revenue are they generating per person? Right. I mean, that's a great measure of how.
And it's shocking how many people don't know.
We always say, people are our biggest asset. It's like, okay, well, why don't you measure against
Right.
the biggest asset?
Yeah. How are your assets doing
how
for
are
you?
you doing with your assets?
Right.
Out of curiosity, do you measure that? Obviously, you measure that per full-time employee, but do you also separate that sometimes to say if you have billable employees, like how much do they need to
for
be?
sure.
Because
Oh,
they need to be covering the non-billable. Non-billable should be.
We have a
paying for
ratio that
themselves,
we
but-
watch, but yeah, so we track the revenue, and we actually do it now based on gross profit. The reason is because we're diverse in the things we do. So some of our business units carry a lot higher margin than other business units. So if you did it on revenue, it could get skewed. So we drill it down to what is our gross profit per team member, and then we do gross profit per skilled team member, which translates really to billable. And then per the total. And then we also watch a ratio of what is our billable to total headcount, right? Just always keep that in check as well.
Yeah, and those, so again, everything we're talking about is numbers, right? And your targets for those things can be completely different from my targets. So it's not even that, what I hope to share on by the numbers is not, here's the right numbers. Because I don't know your right numbers. I know what I think mine are. I don't know what somebody in Wisconsin's are or California or anything else. But help people, potentially understand the importance of those numbers and maybe some of the things you should be tracking, some of the things you should be paying attention to, maybe some things you can do if those numbers start to get outside of where you want them, type things. But there's, how much working capital should your company have? What's your revenue per FTE? What's your revenue per, what's your return on assets?
How much debt's a healthy amount of debt to take on?
Yeah, how leveraged should you? There's everything's a number, and again, it's not that there's a right number to really any of it. I guess there's some general rules of thumb.
What's a good ROI on an asset investment?
Right.
There's a lot of good. But you mentioned you were going to share it on By the Numbers, but I don't think we.
I was literally going to say, before we go to that, I got one last question, and then I'm going to have you actually talk about what By the Numbers is. But real quick, I think another value add is we were going to talk about this on the last episode, but we didn't get to it. Matthew, you surrounded yourself with different people that compliment you as you came from the shop floor, and then you did the same thing. We're going to hit kind of more on what you do, and then maybe you give some advice here. When should someone, you hired like a financial, you've had bookkeepers, and now you guys have a CFO. When should a manufacturer or a fabrication company, maybe they're mom and pop, maybe they're just an owner operator, maybe they're getting bigger, when should they start thinking about, we need a dedicated resource internally and maybe versus externally to do their numbers, especially on the financial side? Well,
I don't think there's any.
There's probably not right, but is there anything
first
that
of all,
tells
you need
you
to
that
be
you
able
should
to financially justify it,
Well,
of
yeah.
course. I don't think that's the same for any business.
Are there telltale signs or anything?
I would tell you, I would err on the side of doing it earlier. I think a good financial person, even if you don't think you can quite justify it financially, they should find a way to pay for themselves, and they will. And then another thing I would say about that is there's some great options out there to outsource that or have that be a fractional team member. Again, another shameless plug for Profab. We do that, but you can. And I have a friend that does this in the financial industry. It's not in manufacturing, but they've built an entire business around fractional CFO controller work. He's got like 50 people now, I think, that's doing that.
Keep seeing people get hired.
They're providing that as a service. So there's great, and that's different than just having like a consultant. A fractional team member is someone that's really truly part of your team. They're in the weekly staff meeting. They think of it as someone that works for you a day or two a week, but they really become part of your team. I think that's a great place to start, is get a fractional controller CFO who really is ingrained in your business, understands it. They're a midterm solution. It's not like we're going to hire a consultant for 90 days or something. This is someone that will be with you till you grow to the point we need to bring on a full-time controller or CFO.
And I think you can broaden that out a little bit. Matter of fact, the episode of Making Chips that came out this week was about kind of on the HR side of things and recruiters and professional HR people. And we had kind of the same questions, like, well, when do you hire your own HR person versus outsource that? And what I would tell anybody, whether we're talking finance or marketing or go down the list, like, we're entrepreneurs. Most of the people listening to MakingSparks, Making Chips, any of these podcasts, you're very entrepreneurial spirited, even if you're not an entrepreneur yet. And we can do it all, right? That's part of the nature of an entrepreneur. I can do this, but you can't. You can up to a certain size, and then you're going to start limiting your
hold
company.
The business back.
Right. And so depending on your strength is when you need to hire that person, right? So for Matthew, with his strength being more on the operations side, coming off the shop floor, growing, building, I can go out there and do the work also.
Also, I would say your passion.
And what do you love doing? Sure.
Yeah, I'm probably better at the financial side of the business than some areas, but that's not what I'm passionate about.
Right.
Therefore, I want to look for someone
Right.
to come in.
So it's, it's, Matthew needed help operationally or needed help financially sooner than I did, because that's my background, right? But I had to quickly get operational people, right? And as you grow, like, you can do HR up to a certain extent yourself, and then you need somebody that really knows what they're doing. You can do marketing to a certain extent up to you by yourself, and then you really need to get somebody that knows what they're doing. And I think you can go down that line in every discipline of your business, and fractional in all those instances are a great place to start. And then at some point you hit some critical mass that, okay, well, now I can hire this, bring it in full time.
Yeah, I will give the listeners a range. I know I danced around. You said when. One thing I will tell you, and Mike really nailed it in terms of this isn't just when you should hire a financial person or when you should hire this. I would just say gravitate to what you're good at and passionate about. But the when you should hire support in general, I have found through looking at many acquisitions, and actually came up with a term around this. I call it maximum complexity. That is the point at which an owner-operator business can't grow beyond the owner-operator. He or she becomes the bottleneck or the
Sure.
cap. That it appears to be 3 to 5 million in revenue in our industry. Generally,
I think that's right.
Generally speaking,
I think
have
that's right.
seen, and it was funny. Our Adam Schmidt, our VP of Business Development and our managing partner at ProFab, he said, "Matthew, why do we see so many acquisitions that are like 3 or 4 million a year in revenue?" He's like, "They're just all 3 or 4 million." I said, "That's the cap." We figured that out. I said, that's because our industry is dominated by guys that go in their garage.
can
It's
do it.
awesome. I can do this. They go buy a machine. They grow this awesome company, literally the American dream. I mean, these companies are worth millions of dollars, but they hit this point to where they're trying to do everything and they just stagnate right there. So I would just tell you, if you're in the 3 to 5 million range and you're saying, why is my company stagnated? It's probably time for you to say, all right, what am I good at and passionate about? And then I need to start going and finding people to do the other things. And then we'll go to the next level. And you might go backwards for a year or two.
I've
But
found,
you've got to do that to push through.
to your point, I mean, you nailed it in this industry, but I would tell you it's much broader. I mean, throughout so many of the deals I've done, I've primarily played in this.
You ever worked with video marketing company
I have
industry?
not.
Darn it.
I have not. But I mean, my deals have primarily been in this size space, right? And in the companies that I've helped, and someone that's passionate about what they do can go create a company that does $1 million a year pretty darn quick. They really can, out of their truck, right? And their filing cabinet is the console of the truck, and that's where all the accounting records are, right? But if you're passionate about it, you can go do that. To get to 2 million, you're going to need a little bit of help. You might be able to do it now with 3 or 4 people, one person in the office kind of keeping track of things. And then to me, that next break is about 5 million. And as you pointed out, kind of that 3 to 5. I've always just called it 5. Now you've hit this critical mass where you need a little bit of a management team. They may or may not be highly trained with big pedigrees, but you need somebody that's doing accounting, and you need somebody that's kind of in charge of sales and marketing. They may also be in charge of purchasing, right? But you have a team behind you.
There's some functions that people have to start taking on.
Right. And then, to get to 10, 20, 50, 100, I mean, now you're a good-sized business with a full team of professionals to do it. And so to Matthew's point, I mean, if you got to 1 million and you hired hired a few folks, and maybe you're sitting there between 1 and 2, and so often, Matthew, I don't know if you see this, but I know I've seen it. So often that business owner is going, man, I feel like I'm doing really well, but I'm still broke all the time, personally and professionally, right? And well, it's because they don't have control, right? They've grown something up doing what they love doing, and they have no control of it. It's controlling them. So getting that help there that literally can take you from that 2 to 5 really quick. And then I think, once you start getting past 5, I mean, you really have to have the right people.
structure,
Yeah, I mean, you got
systems and
you got to have some processes. You got to have the right people. Doesn't mean you have to have a huge corporate office with, but you have to have those things in place. And I think you pointed out in this industry, it's very, very true. But I would tell you, it's much, much broader than that. Even it's most industries.
Well, see, I asked a good question. There you guys went on for
Great
another
question.
6 minutes of answering. So that's good. But earlier, Mike kind of alluded to by the numbers as a name of something. And we've all been talking about numbers, and now we've been probably overdoing the teasing here. But Mike, tell us what's up your sleeve from a podcast standpoint.
Yeah, so we'll be launching soon another podcast kind of in the Making Chips family called By the Numbers, and it'll be focused on the things we've talked about today, just in more detail, maybe on certain, we'll have an episode on maybe we talk about revenue per FTE and why it matters and how you track it, and compare this and that. We'll talk about balance sheets and cash flow statements and income statements,
KPIs,
all these different KPIs. How do you find them? I mean, that's one thing. It's easy to say, well, you need to measure yourself against these KPIs. Well, what is a good standard, right?
We sometimes struggle with that with our marketing, right? Like what's a kind of a vanity metric that actually results into sales or whatever? What's a good KPI? So yeah.
Yeah, what's what's low performing, normal, and high performing in a revenue per FTE, and how do you find that number? So there's just I think we've talked at length today about the importance of the numbers. So we just want to we want to do a show that kind of digs into that. My business partner will be part of that. I'm hoping Matthew will be part of that.
Yeah, love to. And I think it's a great topic for us. I think it's missing in the podcast space in our industry. I think it's a perfect niche.
Yeah, and I think if our listeners are interested, and Matthew's a good example, there are probably lots of manufacturers and fabricated leaders that are like, they do like the number, they like it enough that they want to kind of learn more about it. Even if you don't like it, you need to learn about it. Sure. I think going over and listening to you guys, and there's gonna be some inspiration there too, as in like how to do things a little bit differently and things like that. So I think if you're listening and you're looking for that, if you liked what this episode was about, definitely check out By the Numbers with Mike. Yeah,
we should be. I'd venture to say, by the time this airs, certainly within the next month of that, this will probably air middle of May.
Nick, you're welcome. We just put Mike on a shot clock.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. We're unveiling. Yeah. We're unveiling it. Now he has to.
That's right.
Now he has to get his ass in gear.
I do. We've talked about it too long. Nick's worked really hard to get some branding together for us, and
there's a lot of great things going on under the Making Chips umbrella right now. So
there is.
More to come on that, but we're moving into the next chapter with that, and Jason is on the mend and starting to re-engage, and we've got Mike getting involved. We've got I don't know, can
I wouldn't.
Somebody else getting involved.
Yeah, I think all of us, Jason, Nick, Matthew, myself. One, we love this industry. I think we all have a strong passion for the industry, and I think we like sharing and we like learning. I think I learn on most of these, whether I'm on them or listening.
Well, more than the people that
provide value
we meet and get connected with through, it's really great. I love, so please reach out if I love meeting new people and hearing from folks, and it's just been really great.
Yeah, the networking that I feel like the relationships I've built in the industry over the last couple of years, just kind of being involved in some of this, I feel like I've known these people my entire life, and it's been great. We all talk about how great everybody in this industry is, and so yeah, reach out. I know Matthew and I both, we love meeting.
Yeah, we'd love to have more guests on from
sure.
around the country. So if you think you've got something to share, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thanks for hanging out with us for 2 episodes. We've been together for about an hour and a half now, so a little bit over. That's kind of fun, right? Coming into our little studio here. But again, if you want to learn more about the numbers and the financial side of things, definitely check out By the Numbers with Mike. If you listen to us here on Making Sparks, or if you have a guest, me and Matthew, we're going to be more active of trying to get more guests across the United States to be a part of Making Sparks, to really talk about fabrication leadership and things like that.
Come visit charming Poseyville, Indiana.
Yeah, if we can get you in
Mike
person.
Mike can attest to that, and we'd love to have you here, and we'll give you a shop tour when you come, and it'd be awesome.
I'll tell anybody listening, it's a great community with great hosts. So.
Well, you'll see our huge studio right here that we're in, right, Mike?
Yep.
It's huge, right? Okay. Again, if you like this episode, rate it, share it, review it. Again, my big thing: share it with people that you like. Recommend people if you have any leaders that you think would be a great guest on Making Sparks. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Reach out to Matthew on LinkedIn. I don't know if our show notes typically have other contact things, but reach out there too. But LinkedIn is probably our best place. But again, thanks again for listening.
All right, Mike, sign us off here. If we're not making sparks,
Not making money.
boom.
Boom.